Welcome to the Council Committee of the Whole, November 18th, 2025. And I'm going to give Addie the roll call opportunity.
Cobb.
Here.
Petrus.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Maddox. Russell. Posh.
Here.
Sheets.
I would like to reflect that Councilor Sheets and Councilor Maddox will be on the Zoom when we sign on to that technology. Which we're going to open up now. Hey, Joe. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
There's everybody.
Oh, there we are. The mics is on.
Good afternoon, everyone, including Heights.
Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Afternoon, Mayor.
All right. I have just roll call, everyone.
Still waiting for Mr. Is Mr. Claytor or Ms. House joining, as far as you know?
Mr. Clayton is just,
Trying to keep up. All right, Mr. Claytor, hello. And is Ms. House on yet? Also, for ODNRs, your information, Ms. Frazzini is on as a panelist, just so you know. And you have to see Ms. Sheets from Cleveland Heights. She was going to also join separately.
well, one is,
Do you want to get started?
yes.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Weiss. I'm the mayor of Shaker Heights. And I'd like to welcome everyone to a joint session of joint work session for the Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights city councils. Because this is a work session for Shaker, we take roll and ask the clerk call the roll. Shaker Heights.
Okay, I'm acting clerk today, and is Mr. Malone here? Mrs. Moore
Here.
Ms. Ann Williams,
Here.
Ms. Carmela Williams,
Here.
Ms. Bixenstein,
Here.
Mr. Claytor,
Here.
and I do not see Ms. Kaus as of yet.
On behalf of Cleveland Heights, I will turn it over to your clerk if a roll call is appropriate for you.
We've already done our roll call.
Okay. Great. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to start with a few introductory remarks. As you know, Bill Larson on behalf of Cleveland Heights, and then we'll jump right in. But for the record, today is Tuesday, November 18th, 2025, just a few minutes after noon. As I mentioned, my name is David Weiss, Mayor of Shaker Heights, and I would like to welcome you to this joint work session of the City Councils of Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights. We call this meeting today to provide an opportunity for City Council members and the public to learn about dam regulation and the current state of Lower Lake Dam directly from representatives of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, or ODNR. By way of background, in July, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District announced its revised recommendation that the dam that created Lower Shaker Lake be removed, and the Doan Brook, which feeds the lake, be restored. Following that announcement of their recommendation, residents of both cities, as well as members of council, have posed a variety of questions regarding the classification of Lower Lake. Dam. Many of those questions were very specific and required specified knowledge and experience dealing with dams. So we set up today's work session as a presentation on dam safety presented by ODNR. And on behalf of ODNR, we have today with us ODNR Dam Safety Project Manager Keith Banikowski. Mr. Banikowski is also joined by Ms. Mia Kanik, Dam Safety Program Manager, and Cindy Pizzini, ODNR's legal counsel. The goal of today's presentation is to educate particularly City Council members as well as residents regarding dams and dam regulation. And now to give a brief overview on the structure of today's meeting, I'll turn it over to Gail Larson, President of the Cleveland Heights City Council.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Banikowski's formal presentation will take approximately 30 minutes, after which he will take questions from members of both city councils. Residents are welcome to use the Zoom Q&A feature to post questions or ask for more information. Any comments mailed to Council Clerk Addie Ballister will be posted in the webinar chat room. Questions that are not answered in this meeting will be incorporated into a frequently asked questions or FAQs page to be posted on the website of each city. Mr. Banikowski, good morning.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to the mayors and both councils today. I'm going to go, whoops, I just shared the wrong screen. All right, please give me a moment here and I'm going to get the presentations ready to go.
While Mr. Banikowski's doing that, I just want to also add to what Ms. Larson said that Shaker's also taking written comments. I received 3 emails so far, and if we have other questions or comments, we will include them in the record too of this meeting.
Okay, so I think I have things ready to go. So again, my name is Keith Banikowski. I've been with the program for over 25 years, as has Mia Kanik, who's the program manager. I'll be handling the initial presentation to begin with, and then we can open things up for question and answer and discussion after that. So this is an overview of what I plan to cover. So before we talk about Lower Shaker specifically,
If you're not sharing your screen, or at least I don't see it. Sorry.
No, I don't see it either. I thought I was missing it on that slide.
Okay, one moment, please.
Just so you know, I think we did see it earlier when you popped on. We did see a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, we see the valley.
Are you able to see now? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit. So, apologize for that. So for an overview, first I wanted to start off with some background information on how dams work, cover a few terms that will be used for the presentation. Then a brief history of Lower Shaker Lake Dam. We'll talk about the condition of the dam and the required remedial measures. And then toward the end, I'll cover dam classification and remediation alternatives. So to start, to give an overview on dams, here we have a natural valley setting with some streams in the bottom of the valley. And a dam is an artificial barrier along with its appurtenant works. So for artificial barriers, typically for dams in Ohio, we have earthen embankments, and appurtenant works are just structures that help the dam function. So here we have highlighted a concrete spillway for the dam. The main job of the earthen embankment is to keep the lake in place both in normal conditions and during flood events, and the spillways used to move water from the lake downstream. Another term that you come across is a drainage basin or a catchment or watershed. And if you look at a point on a stream, there's an area upstream where all the water that runs off inside the area will all funnel down to the stream and to that point. So during a storm event, some rain goes in the ground, other runs off, and anything inside this line will all flow down to a certain point. And so a dam is similar in that way, that it has a drainage basin, an area where the water within that area goes down to the lake and then either is stored behind the dam or it passes through the spillway. So just a quick simulation, you get the storm events, lake level is going to go up, the spillways begin to flow, and you get flow in the streams downstream. So a key concept is that earthen embankments are not designed to withstand overtopping. So a dam has two ways to handle floods. One, it can store water behind it in the lake area, and the other way is to have a spillway. And dams work by having both of those. If you don't have ability to store much water, you need very big spillways. And you can see the combination of storing and spillway capacity is what prevents water from going over the top of the embankment. This is a picture of a dam highlighting a couple items. The term freeboard is an important one, and it is the elevation difference between the normal pool level and the top of dam pool level. And it has a very big impact on both spillway capacity and storage. The more freeboard you have, the more ability you have to store water, and your spillways can convey more water. When you have little freeboard, both are reduced. All right, so that's the background. And now I'm going to transition over to Lower Shaker specifically. Okay, Lower Shaker Lake Dam. It's located on the east side of Coventry and south of North Park Boulevard. It has a drainage basin of about 4.8 square miles. So it's a considerable drainage area for the size dam and lake that are there. So for Lower Shaker, again, the definition is an artificial barrier and appurtenant works. The artificial barrier for Lower Shaker is an earthen embankment. It extends from the south side all the way north to North Park Boulevard. It has here an irregular configuration. It was built in the 1800s, and it does not look like typical dam embankments, but this is all placed fill in the valley that creates the barrier that holds the lake in place. And the dotted line here shows the extent of the placed fill. So there are trees and brush on the downstream slope. There's now a parking lot on the crest, and then you have the upstream slope, which has some brush and rock riprap. For appurtenant works, there is a spillway to the south. It's a masonry block spillway with some concrete parts, and that's the main way that water goes from the lake to the downstream channel. There's also a low-level drain, what we call a lake drain, which is relatively small when you consider flood events. The main purpose of a lake drain is to lower the pool for maintenance, to allow you to dewater the reservoir for removing sediment, for other activities such as that. It's not really a flood response spillway. The main spillway is the principal spillway to the south. The configuration of the dam is such that it is not level as far as the top of dam goes. Typical dams have the same elevation from one end of the dam to the other. This one is higher toward the spillway and then slopes lower as you get toward the right end. And what this creates is a low area or flow path on the right end where during flood events, the water level elevates and then begins to flow over the right end of the dam. Again, it was built in the 1800s. The height of the dam is 17.3 feet. The freeboard is about 1.5 feet. So that's between what the normal lake level and when this right end begins to overtop. It has about a 16-acre lake, and the drainage area is pretty large. It's about 4.8 square miles. (1979) is the beginning of the inspections for the dam. The Phase 1 inspection program was administered by the Army Corps of Engineers. They had local engineers and government agencies inspect dams across the U.S. And it's it was a comprehensive inspection that included site visits, review of files, engineering calculations. And for the 1979 inspection, the dam was put in Class 1, which is a high hazard classification. The findings of the report indicate that the spillway is seriously inadequate, and they said that the dam was considered unsafe, non-emergency until more detailed studies prove otherwise or corrective measures are completed. So across the U.S. and in Ohio, these Phase 1 inspections took place. There were a few hundred in Ohio. Some of them would come back and say adequate spillway capacity. We had some emergency conditions, but for this particular one, the two main items are inadequate spillway capacity, and they labeled the dam as unsafe. The dam safety program is within the Division of Water Resources within ODNR. So ODNR has many divisions that operate somewhat separately from each other. We're in the Division of Water, and we're a small regulatory program. And one of our responsibilities is to inspect dams on a periodic basis, about every 5 years. So I have a list of our inspections through the years, with our most recent being 2023. This is a table of contents from the 2023 report. There are two main items that I'll talk to in detail. One is the required remedial measures, and the other is the classification. In our reports, we break things down into different areas. One is the engineer repairs and investigations. These are the most substantial problems with the dam. We also have owner maintenance items, which are smaller items that the owner can handle on their own. And then we have monitoring items. The items that are listed in this section, it's a requirement that the owner hire a professional engineer to investigate and address. So the four items that we have in the 2023 report are summarized there on the left. So the first one is still inadequate flood capacity. Flood capacity and spillway capacity are relatively interchangeable terms. So inadequate flood capacity, deficiencies with the masonry spillway, improper crest alignment, and the last one is repairs needed to the embankment. This shows a picture standing on the shoreline, looking at the dam toward the right end. So North Park Boulevard is here to the right. This is the lake at normal pool level, and there's very minimal elevation behind the dam before the water overflows the right end. Having a relatively small spillway and very little freeboard, the dam is not able to pass large flood events. In this case, for this particular dam, it's also not able to pass small flood events. This is the spillway that is at the south end of the dam. It's a relatively old structure. It has gone through some modifications, but due to its age, construction, and some noted deterioration, there's a requirement for investigation for this, for the stability and integrity of this structure. For the improper crest alignment, the picture here to the left is toward the right end of the dam. And in this case, the elevation of the embankment drops off this way. And during flood events, water will overtop. There's a small island here in the parking lot with a tree. This is not a formal spillway. Water overtops this area, can flow down the road, and can also wrap back around on top of the dam. And that is problematic from a dam safety perspective. And then the embankment itself, it has problems with trees and brush, erosion, and poor drainage at the toe. This is standing at the downstream toe. There's often ponded water in this area. There's erosion on the slope. And for a proper engineered embankment, trees and brush are not a proper cover. The roots and the trees cause problems for seepage and stability, as well as inspection. For the age of this dam, when it was constructed, there would need to be significant repair of this embankment. The inadequate spillway capacity is a difficult item to understand, kind of from that theoretical standpoint. So we thought it would be good to show you a case history of a dam that was also inadequate on its spillway capacity. So we'll look at Kinsman Lake Dam. It's located east of Cleveland near the Pennsylvania border. The dam is on the south side of the impoundment. It's about a 10-acre lake, and you can see it's in a small neighborhood community. So it was constructed in 1961. It's a Class 2 structure. So Class 1 is our highest level. Class 2 is the next one down, which is considered a significant hazard. It's about 23 feet high. For the freeboard, there's 6.8 feet between the pool level and the top of the embankment. And off in the distance, you can see a person on the embankment. So there's about 7 feet of freeboard on the dam, and it impounds a 9-acre lake. In this case, we're standing on the embankment. This is the earthen barrier. The spillway is at the left end of the dam. And we'll turn around and take a look at the right abutment. So the upstream slope is relatively clear. There's a road on top. You can see a guardrail. On the right end of the dam here, you see some mature trees on the embankment, which are problematic. And do note this house that's on the far right side. So this is in the neighborhood. It's probably 50 to 80 feet from the right end of the dam. The right end of the dam is by this vehicle on the end. It has a sizable spillway in comparison to Lower Shaker Lake Dam. The dam has much more flood capacity than Lower Shaker, but it's still deficient based on its classification. So here is looking from the right end of the dam. Again, the spillway is off in the distance. You've got the earthen embankment. It's not very well maintained. There are trees and brush on the downstream. And to the left here, there are some mature trees as well. July of 2019, a severe storm occurred in this area. This is radar from the National Weather Service. It's showing a 12-hour cumulative rainfall, but most of the rain here took place in about 6 hours. I have the drainage basin outlined here. So all this area, any rain inside this goes down through streams and goes down to the lake and dam. You can see that parts of the basin got between 6 and 7 inches, with the outer parts of the basin getting a little bit less, but still sizable rainfall around 3 inches. Again, this is what the dam looks like on normal days. This is a video from residents. It's going to be a very brief video, so I'll show it. So during the flood event, rain, of course, overwhelmed the streams and went into the lake.
Oh.
And this is water going over the top of the dam, about 2 feet deep. So the water level rose about 9 feet. I'll play that again. You can see already there's massive erosion on the downstream slope, more erosion here toward where the film is being taken. The guardrail is overwhelmed in the reservoir, that large spillway. It's exceeded that capacity and is going over the bridge as well. And as they pan to the left, you'll see some of the mature trees on the dam. This is 2 days after when we visited the dam. So again, the floodwaters were a couple feet over the top of the dam, which is this road, over the top of the guardrail, severe damage on the downstream slope. Oops. Sorry, the thing is a little sensitive here. I'm going to pan through by hand here. You can see the telephone poles down at the bottom. Those large trees were trees that were on the dam. The breach is over 100 feet wide. The erosion that took place during the breach not only removed the dam, but removed a significant part of the abutment, and this house was condemned afterwards. There was scour of sediment and the natural valley underneath the lake, and it was a complete loss of the impoundment. And here's an overview after the event with the breach on the right side, and this is the spillway that was on the left. So after our 2023 inspection, an engineering group, HDR, did an investigation of the dam. They did a very thorough, comprehensive evaluation of the structure, and it was published in their report. And their findings for the dam are similar to what ODNR found, is significant deficiencies with the dam. Again, it agreed with our inspection report, and they did a lot of additional analysis on the dam. So now I'll shift from the condition of the dam and the required remedial measures to the classification. So for the Dam Safety Program regulations for our jurisdictional dams, we classify them based on 3 criteria. One is the height of the dam. The second is the total storage volume at the top of dam elevation. And then the last component is the potential downstream hazard. And this is considered for all dams regardless of their condition. They have the potential to fail, and we look at where that water would go and what its potential impacts would be downstream. We evaluate each one of these, the height, storage, and downstream hazard, and the highest individual classification is the final classification of the dam. Class 1 is our highest, and generally that's called high hazard potential. Class 4 is the lowest. And then we also have 2 and 3. So for the height of the dam, it's from the downstream, the lowest point along the downstream toe of the dam to the top of dam elevation. And the water level is considered at the top of the embankment. So not the normal pool level down here, but when the water level would increase during a flood event. For Lower Shaker, the height is 17.3 feet. Based on our regulations, that puts it into a class 4, which is the lowest classification. The storage volume at the top of dam is about 178 acre feet, which is about 58 million gallons. That puts it into a class 3 designation. So the last component is the potential downstream hazard. So we look at where water would go and what would be impacted if the dam would fail, not only as it sits on a normal day, but we look at how it performs during severe floods. Here's an overview of Doan Brook downstream of the dam. The dam is in the lower right-hand corner. The light blue line is a simulation that an inundation boundary from some of our computer simulations. The first hazard is roadways downstream of the dam. There's Coventry and Spare Hill Road that are downstream that would be damaged if the impoundment released during a flood. It follows down Doan Brook to the west and to the northwest. There's another road crossing, a small structure here, and then it follows Doan Brook toward a park. In that park, there is a culvert that takes water from Doan Brook and bypasses University Circle. This culvert has very limited capacity when looking at severe floods. So for simulations, this culvert's overwhelmed, water would go through the park and then into the University Circle area, causing significant inundation. The classification of the dam since '79 has been Class 1, our highest hazard. Our primary concern is this University Circle area, that there would be significant depths and velocities in a very urban populated area in the event of a failure of the dam. There is an emergency action plan for the dam. This was done by a consultant. They provided inundation mapping, which is a requirement of our program. And what this inundation mapping is for first responders to understand where the water would go and be able to see structures that are potentially affected. So this is one of the inundation maps. For this type of analysis, for this emergency action plan, this was done what we would consider a Tier 1 analysis. This table is from FEMA, and they discuss different levels of modeling that's done for dam failures. So this is table 10.6, it's for dam breach modeling. A Tier 1 analysis is more of a simple screen analysis that provides you the overall footprint, the general inundation area, but it's not a detailed analysis for downstream impacts. If you wanted that, you would move to a Tier 3 analysis, which has not been submitted to our office. So based, again, on the potential impacts in the University Circle area, the dam is Class 1 based on potential downstream hazard. So for remediation, there are three main categories that dam owners pursue for remediation. First is modification of the dam to meet the dam safety regulations. The second is to modify the dam to be smaller and exempt from the regulations. And then the third is to remove or breach the dam. Just as a note, I covered this a little bit before. From the dam safety program's perspective, our main focus is preventing uncontrolled releases of lakes behind dams. So as a regulatory agency, we work with the dam owner and their engineer to look at the safety level and improve the safety of the dams. If a dam is past its useful life, the owner has the option to remove it or modify it. If the dam has deficiencies, then we require them to fix it. And at the bottom, the dam owner it's their responsibility to hire an engineer to provide the design to the Division of Water Dam Safety Program for review and approval. The division doesn't decide the fate, but we do require owners to address their deficiencies. And then these are the three paths that they typically take when looking at those deficiencies. So first of all, to meet the dam safety requirements. So item one, the deficiencies with the current dam effectively require construction of a new dam. The fill was placed in the 1800s and has problems in and of itself. The dam is highly inadequate in its flood capacity. So basically there needs to be a new dam constructed in place if it's to meet dam safety regulations. This would mean increases in freeboard, additional spillways, and armoring or replacement of the embankment. And the HDR report of 2025 does a good job of looking at these issues and looking at different potential configurations for it. One item that's been brought to our attention is the classification of the dam. And the owner may provide a detailed dam failure and inundation analysis for a new dam and request a class change. That's an acceptable path. I do need to point out that what's been provided so far is on the tier 1 level. If a class change is being requested, we'll need a much more detailed analysis, something on the tier 3 level. And in addition, the dam that is there has so many deficiencies that it's not worth analyzing that dam. We need to see a proposed dam to look at any change in classification. And then the last item toward the bottom, changing the classification might not have a major impact on the cost of remediation. So the design floods for dams are affected by the classification, but as you saw with Kinsman Lake Dam, that one had more spillway capacity than Lower Shaker, but it was also deficient. If a proposed dam would, let's say, go to class 2, it still may be very expensive to meet the class 2 regulations. So the next option, the next general category is to modify the structure to be exempt from our regulations. So this is a little different than the classification scheme. The criteria that decide whether a dam is in our jurisdiction is purely the height of the dam and the volume at the top of dam elevation. So there are 3 situations where a dam is exempt. The first, regardless of the height of the dam, if it stores less than 15 acre-feet, it's out of our jurisdiction. So as an example, a dam that's about 15 feet high, 2.5 acre lake, this would be a dam that's out of our jurisdiction. So this covers a lot of farm ponds, smaller impoundments, especially in steeper terrain where you might have a relatively high embankment, but the lake is small. As long as your volume is less than 15 acre feet, this would be exempt. The next row here is if the dam height is between 6 and 10 feet, it can store between 15 and 50 acre feet. And again, this is exempt from our jurisdiction. So at 10 feet high, actually less than 10 feet, let's say 9.9, and a 10 acre lake, that meets the criteria for the height as well as the storage volume, and that would be exempt. And then the last row here is if the embankment is less than 6 feet high, it doesn't matter how much it stores. This comes into play more in Northwest Ohio where we have very flat terrain. You can build a low embankment and have several acre impoundment behind it, and that would be exempt from our jurisdiction. This is an example of a situation in Hudson, Ohio, for a dam that was modified to be exempt from our regulations. On the left, you have the original impoundment. The dam is on the west side of the impoundment here. This dam actually had a very similar drainage area and it was inadequate on spillway capacity. In 2003, a major flood event overtopped the dam and damaged it, initiated evacuations downstream within a day after that. to 1 to 2 days, there was another storm that overtopped the dam again. So the dam was temporarily drained and breached, and then the owner modified the structure to make it lower, both for the pool area and the embankment, and they made it exempt from our regulations. So this is the original impoundment. You can see there is now a smaller impoundment, and along with that, the embankment crest was lowered, so it has less storage potential behind it. And the spillways were modified to make the normal pool lower, and then there you have the smaller impoundment. Switching to the next category for removal or breach. For this particular situation, the owners decided that this water supply reservoir was too costly to repair and maintain, so they decided to breach the structure. A breach is an excavated channel through the embankment so that the dam no longer creates an impoundment. So the dam is in the lower left corner here. This is the original pool behind it. This is after it's been modified. On the right here, this is the drained impoundment. The impoundment's revegetated. There's a small breach channel here through the dam, former dam site. And this is what it looks like standing on the dam, looking upstream into the former impoundment, which has revegetated. So the stream channel now runs through this excavated channel. Switching over to removal. This is a dam that was in Lake County. We're looking upstream. There's a concrete spillway here to the, we call this the right end of the dam. We're always looking downstream. There's a concrete spillway, and then there's an earthen embankment. This, again, had inadequate spillway capacity. They had several homes downstream of it, made it a high hazard dam. The decision was to remove the dam. So here we're oriented with the lake to the north. This is the former dam site. They had removed the spillway, the entire embankment, and then reestablished the natural stream channel through the reservoir area. During a previous conversation, Garfield Park Reservation was brought to our attention. We don't have any records for this site. What we could do, though, is look at some aerial photography and some topographic information to get a feel for what this looked like. And this was a good example to look at. It appears that originally there was a stream channel that went through the center of the valley here. There's a dam embankment here, and then a structure, what appeared to be a masonry structure that conveyed water from the impoundment side to the downstream. I don't believe it had a normal lake area. We do see structures such as this across the state for temporary storage. Looking at the aerial photography, it looks like they moved the stream channel to the west and breached the embankment so that normal flows now bypass this area over here, which they put in an embankment and created a small impoundment, small water feature over here, which is a small impoundment. I believe it's out of our jurisdiction. But situations such as this, we do see them across the state for remediating dams that have problems, but also including a water feature for the final project. So with that, that's the conclusion of the information we have to present, and me and I can field questions from the council.
Okay, Keith, why don't you stop sharing, and then we'll go back to the council. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith, so much for the presentation. It's very helpful just to get a little definitive use of terms, and also understanding some of the requirements that you've discussed. So I'd say for Shaker Council, if you want to just raise your hand, and we'll kind of switch back and forth between Cleveland Heights and Shaker. I saw Councilwoman Moore first, so I'll go with you, and then we'll go to Cleveland Heights.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that if I understood this correctly, that if we were going to pursue a reclassification of Lower Lake Dam, the first step may be to hire a consultant to engineer a plan that would involve the conditions for the request to modify the classification. And based on that, a city or cities would apply then to ODNR with this engineering study that would support the reclassification under your conditions, your regulations, and that would be the next step. Could you comment on that? Did I understand
Sure.
clearly?
I believe that's a good summary. Just as a the dam itself having the type of fill that's there from the 1800s, which was not an engineered fill, and the severe deficiency in flood capacity. Analyzing the current dam is not a worthwhile endeavor. Something needs to be proposed that's a workable solution to the cities, and then a higher level analysis needs to be performed on the potential impacts if that structure failed.
So a twofold study. One
Correct.
for the reconstruction of the dam, and secondly, an impact study for flooding, potentially
Correct.
downstream.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll go to Cleveland Heights.
Counselor Posh.
Was such a study already completed with the Northeastern Ohio Sewer District?
So go ahead, Mia.
No, I was just gonna say, I believe the HDR report provided alternatives as far as how to repair the dam. However, there was not a evaluation of the downstream hazard. So that part of the analysis was not included with the HDR report. With that being said, because of how developed it is downstream, if you looked at reclassification, because we know that there are buildings impacted that will be flooded. The question is, how much flooding will occur? That it's really a difference between, is it class 1 or is it going to be class 2? There's no way, like for class 3, that basically is a dam where the downstream hazard would be to local roads and rural property, not high value property. High value property, like large buildings and things like that, are class 2 hazard. So if you're flooding a large building like that, it's automatically, the lowest it could be would be class 2. This class 3, it's more, rural properties, garages, low value property being flooded, and local roads. You're in a very urban environment. There's lots of people downstream. That's not really, we don't foresee that, any classification less than a class 2. Because of what is downstream, the amount of people and infrastructure that's downstream.
Mia, could I ask you just to clarify this classification process? I think, Keith, at the very beginning of your presentation, you looked at the 3 items for classification. And one I think was a class 4 and one was a class 3, and then there was a class 1 designation because of the potential downstream hazard. So how do you call that? What do you call that kind of a dam where it's at different levels, or do you take the highest risk and call that a class 1? Am I making sense there?
Yes, but the way the regulations describe it, it provides, it says to evaluate those 3 items, and then the highest classification is the final classification of the dam. So this is not uncommon for us across the state. Something might be class 3 on height, class 4 on hazard, class 2 on storage, then it's a class 2 dam. So it's whichever one of those 3 is the highest criteria.
Thank you, because I think there's been some confusion
Yeah.
in the public about the 3 tests and what the designation as a result.
Right.
Yeah, it's an or, not an and. You know, like it's, you look at each one and whichever one is the highest one is the final classification.
Okay.
And I do have one comment to a previous question. For the analyses that have been done on the downstream area, the one that has been submitted to us was for the emergency action plan. And as I mentioned, that was a tier 1 study. So it provides information, but it's not effective for determining classification. Other groups, it's been described to us that Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District and others may have more detailed models available, but those have not been specifically submitted to us. So it's a normal situation where as the years go, the models get updated to higher levels. There's new technology, new information. So a higher level model has not been submitted to us. There may be a higher level model out there that we're unaware of. But one of the key items is when you do a dam failure analysis, the engineer needs to look at the flood that comes into the dam and then how it responds to that flood, because dams can breach in different ways to cause flooding downstream. So although there may be a model that helps look at downstream inundation, you need to see what the proposed dam would be so you can properly fail that dam to see the potential impacts.
Okay. Back to Cleveland Heights.
Councilor Cobb.
Sure. At the end of your remarks, I can't quite make out the last name, but Keith, you talked about a water feature. Could you elaborate on that and how that might work at the lower lake?
Sure. One moment, please. I'm going to pull up a program here.
While Keith is doing that, I just wanted to elaborate a little more on classification. I have a presentation that I've done before that I could share with you guys. If I can share my screen, if I can figure that out. All right. Are you guys seeing that?
Nope.
There it goes. Now we have it.
Oh, okay. So this is a presentation that I've done before in the past for dam owners. So you can see here class 1 dams. So this is any dam that's if it's greater than 60 feet, if it has more than 5,000 acre feet of storage, and acre foot, think of it as an acre with 1 foot of water in it. I know it's kind of a strange terminology there for storage volume, but that's a typical thing that we use in dam safety. And then this probable loss of life or structural collapse. So these are usually your bigger dams, but it can be a small dam that has hazard that's relatively close, to the stream channel, right? Class 2 dams. So that's any dam that's between 40 and 60 feet high. So then you have this 500 to 5,000 acre feet of storage and loss of high value properties. So that's damage to businesses, other dams, homes, interstates, state routes, and water or wastewater impoundments. Then class 3, so this is much smaller dams, and it's more, the property damage is like agricultural structures, garages, exempt dams, local township roads, that not, you don't have a lot of traffic on it, but much smaller dams. So I wanted just to point those out. And like you said, you're looking at the 3 different things at height, storage volume, and then the downstream hazard. So you're always needing to evaluate that hazard downstream, because when you have a dam, right, you're creating a hazard by having that lake behind the dam. And so the people downstream, may not be aware that, hey, there's a dam up there and there's all this water that's behind the dam. And so by having that dam, you're creating a hazard to the people downstream. And so that is why we have dam safety, because we want to make sure that the dam never fails in any kind of, flood, large flood events, or, that it has structural or stability issues. These are all the things that we're evaluating when we go out and do an inspection. And, you have this huge lake, but the dam may not be very big, but your lake is very big, and it has a lot of volume of water that could be released if the dam were to be overtopped and fail. And so that is really the thing that we are most concerned with, because we are trying to, make sure that the people downstream are safe. So with that, I will turn it over to Keith. I will stop sharing.
All right. We'll see if this works.
Thank you, Mia, for that addition of information in between.
So is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I have the impoundment outlined. So the question I recall is a side channel feature potential for Shaker. Again, we work with design engineers routinely, and we convey as much information and perspective as we can with them. But we don't tell owners what alternative they have to go with. They evaluate those and they propose something to us. And as Mia said, we look at public safety and we either approve the alternative or we indicate if there's a problem with public safety. So for the impoundment, I'll just say hypothetically, if a culvert was installed to drain the lake, you could potentially add an embankment along the edge, either this size, potentially much bigger, to create a side channel impoundment. So you would still have the water feature, and then the main channel for Donebrook would bypass the impoundment. I know for dams such as this, the watershed is relatively large compared to the lake. And you can see even in this picture, sediment is a problem. Small lakes like this fill up with sediment. They also have a very high turnover rate during flood events. The flood water coming in basically displaces much of the lake water, and you can have water quality issues. So we do see owners look at this and say, well, we'd rather not try and maintain this lake. We'd rather have a smaller lake that's not on the main stream channel. But from our perspective, once we deal with the structure that is the regulated structure, let's say it would be breached or whatever its fate would be to be out of our jurisdiction, then the owners can decide what sort of water features they would want to add, as long as those features are out of our jurisdiction.
Okay, a follow-up question.
Does that help answer the question that was asked?
Yes, it does. A follow-up. What do you believe would be the maximum size of a water feature that would work for that?
I don't have an estimate on that. That would be up to the design engineer to take a look at and propose.
Back to Cleveland Heights, Mayor Weiss, or back to you?
Let's go back to the shaker, although Keith, we may have you come back to this photo in a few minutes. Council, Shaker Council. Ms. Bixenstein, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Banichowski, for this excellent and informative presentation. We had heard from the Northeast Ohio Sewer District in July that if the dam were to be rebuilt to be a Class 1 dam, that it would require fencing around the area near the dam on the west end of the lake that was approximately 8 feet tall. I don't know if you would call that freeboarding or if that's something else. And I'm just wondering if you agree with that. Did that come from ODNR? That was a concern that it would negatively impact the aesthetics of the area.
Sure. So HDR is an experienced dam engineering group, and it's common during their design process that they'll periodically meet with us to give kind of a broad review of what they're looking at and some of their conclusions. So HDR did, we had a call with HDR and they discussed some of the things that they were investigating and wanted our feedback and initial perspective on things that they thought needed to be done. The flood wall that you're indicating, I believe the primary reason for it is because of the lack of freeboard at the site. This particular site has challenges on the ends of the dam and upstream and downstream. It's very difficult. Normal dam settings, if you need to get more storage and spillway capacity, you can simply raise the top of the dam higher to store more water. You can put in additional spillways to convey water, make them bigger to the downstream area. But this site is extremely difficult to work. So their perspective on it was, first of all, to put in a new spillway that would keep water off of North Park Boulevard, keep that area from inundating so frequently. So that was one of their components. The flood event that I showed you for Kinsman, you'll hear of the 100-year or the 1% chance annual exceedance flood. The flood event at Kinsman was well in excess of that. And one of the things we do as the dam safety program is we study floods all over the state and Midwest that go well over the 100-year flood. So HDR's approach was to put in a new spillway to handle basically up to the 100-year. And then that flood wall was needed to keep water off of North Park to keep flood events in excess of that in the main stream valley and not going up onto North Park. So I believe that wall was part of their design to try and keep water in the main valley without spreading out and flowing down roadways. One of the areas, one of the situations that we do see loss of life in flood events across the state is for motorists in flowing water. So it does not take much water to lift a car and lose grip. And sadly, when those motorists get washed away into floods, it's a very sad outcome. So they were looking at ways to keep water off of North Park.
Thank you.
Back to Cleveland Heights.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. Keith, these questions, two of them, are in relation to the earthen dam that exists right now. Is it possible for that dam to even be repaired? And I ask that question because my understanding that it has been weakened by erosion and also by the critters that are building their dens inside this earthen dam. So I'd like to know about that possibility. And then if that old earthen dam comes down, would it be acceptable to ODNR to replace it with an earthen dam with all brand new materials and a different design for the spillway, or same design for spillway, but improved and repaired?
Okay. So the first part of your question, can the existing structure be repaired? I would say the chance of that is very, very minimal. We have across the state during the canal era of the state, there are several large impoundments that were built during the canal era, which was 1800s. And as we have retrofit those dams, they did the best they could, but those fills are generally very, very poor in quality and require significant remediation. For this particular site, I'm going off of my memory from reading the HDR report, where I believe they took borings of the structure. My recollection is that they were very hesitant to rely on that fill at all. And their proposed alternative was basically to replace that structure with a buried concrete structure because of its condition. And as you mentioned, the trees and brush, the rodents, and the techniques that were used and the qualities of fill are all very concerning. So their perspective was to put a different structure in. Now, whether you could replace it with an earthen structure, again, that would have to be, I would say potentially, but that would have to be rolled into a proposed design because the dam doesn't have much freeboard and it's very difficult to get any flood events from the lake side to the downstream side. So, yes, you could potentially put in an earthen structure. Usually from a cost perspective, earthen structures are less costly than concrete, but that there are also complications with trying to excavate and replace an earthen structure in that location. And I know it's been expressed to us, and I believe it was on HDR's radar, that large tree removal and large modifications of the site were not an option. And if you were to replace that with earth and fill, my initial thought would be that would be a substantial footprint for construction activities.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of the proposed concrete structure that they had buried inside the existing fill was that it would be able to withstand overtopping. So that was also like why keeping the water, in the valley, then it would go over this new concrete dam that would be buried. So then it would not fail from overtopping.
Thank you very much.
Back to Shaker. Maybe I'll throw out one question that I had. One of the topics of discussion with the sewer districts had been one of the actual things that had changed was the potential of additional culvert capacity in University Circle, potentially where the lagoon is by the art museum, putting additional culvert capacity. Does that, I assume that helps the analysis. It can't hurt it, I presume, but I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that.
Okay. So the I'm going to back up just a second on that discussion. So it's been known, looking through the records, we regulate about 1,400 dams. So it's difficult to know all the details of all the dams downstream configurations. We are aware of that. We have been through our history aware of that culvert. The initial information from a FEMA report indicated that culvert had much more capacity than what it actually does, based on some studies we have seen from Northeast Ohio. We've asked them questions about it, and they've given us indications of some studies that have been done on it. So it has very limited capacity compared to what was thought previously. The increase in capacity, it's certainly a benefit for common flooding. But once you get to a situation where you have a major storm, a major flood event, culverts won't keep up with the amount of water. They will overwhelm culverts. And the other problem that we could see when talking with Northeast Ohio was trees and brush and other things clogging culverts. That happens at roadway culverts as well. So adding an additional culvert to try and bypass would likely be beneficial for more common flooding. But once you got into major flood events and dam failure situations, culverts won't keep up with it.
Maybe just to follow Keith, because one of the things that the sewer district that I did, as we understand it, is that you're talking about if there's a major flood. If you take the stream bed and create the stream bed, though, and maybe have a separate water feature that's offline, does that change your answer? If the Dome Brook were put back to its stream condition with this, a separate water feature?
I'm not sure I completely follow, but if can you say that again? Or Mia, do you want to?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that, like if you're removing the dam and creating a much smaller water feature, the main hazard is gone. The hazard is the water that is in the lake area that is stored behind the dam. And so by, if you're removing that and then creating a much smaller, off stream water feature, right, it's not connected with the large, the 4 square mile drainage area, then, that smaller water feature is not going to be impacted by all that water coming from the watershed. It will only be impacted by, whatever water, the smaller area around the water feature. And that's something that your engineer could take a look at to see, how much water would be coming into a side channel. But by removing the dam and having a natural stream channel, then you wouldn't have any of our requirements. That is why, our requirements are very high because of this hazard that's being created by the lake. So once you remove that, then it's just a matter of stormwater control, which is what Northeast Regional Sewer District is all about. We don't get involved with stormwater issues in community planning, right? So it's just because it's a dam that's big enough to be regulated by us that we get involved, and that we have very high standards, which is typical. Our standards here in Ohio are similar throughout the country, with other, state dam safety programs and,
That's
national,
the question.
like Army Corps of Engineers and other, dam owning federal agencies. So, we have this higher standard, but it's because we don't want the dam to fail during a rain event.
Back to Cleveland Heights.
Counselor Posh.
Okay, so this is a $1 million question, or maybe the lawyers will advise against asking it, but how much time do we have to rectify this situation?
Well, I guess our report clearly states that the time has passed. Normally, we give dam owners 5 years from our inspection report to address this. And so, like you could see from Keith's history, that we've come out there many times and kind of have said the same thing. So I will say this, that the responsibility and liability of the dam and any kind of failure that might happen is on the owner. It is not the dam safety program. We are a regulator. We are telling you what things need to be done to improve the safety of the dam. So, and right now, this whole, people are like, oh, well, the dam's been there, for 150 years and everything's okay. I think you've been lucky up to this point. So I don't think that luck is a good strategy on building safety in your community. So I think it's really important to take a look at, what things need to be done so that you can improve the safety in your community.
Thank you.
I'm going to interject here for just a moment because we are running close on the amount of time we have, and I want to make sure for the public that's listening in, we knew there would be probably way more questions than we had time for. So there is a Q&A function, and please feel free to use that as to make a comment or ask a question, and we will do our best as quickly as we can to try to respond to those over the near term. But I want to just make sure that you have enough time to get your comment or your question into the Q&A. Mrs. Moore.
To that question, the point of that question, since safety is our number one concern as elected officials, safety of the public, if we were to have predicted a major maximum flood event, say what we now call a 100-year flood or 100-year rain event, the only recourse that we would have to potentially prevent an overtopping of the current dam would be to immediately lower the water level in Horseshoe Lake. And
Lower Lake, you mean?
Excuse me. I was going to say, as we did in Horseshoe Lake, eliminating that and breaching the dam. So, is that correct?
So from an engineering perspective, one of the things that we look at with the lake and the watershed is the ratio of how big is the lake compared to how big is the watershed. This lake is very, very undersized. As I mentioned with Pine Lake, that dam was substantially damaged by 2 floods in a row within the same week. When you have a very small impoundment on a very big watershed, you can drop the water level several feet, but during that flood event, it shoots right back up. So, but part of what you're saying, I think, is a key for safety as you go forward. If you look at the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, they've done a lot of investigations on impacts for dam failures. They own and operate many dams out in the West, and they're really on the forefront of how you look at dams and look at safety. But one of the takeaways from their procedures is that lack of warning is one of the biggest factors for public safety. If you look at the fatalities that have occurred at dams, much of that can be directly related to people not knowing what's going on. And that's one of our big concerns with the university area, is that by releasing a significant amount of water that certainly cannot go through that culvert and that goes into the university area, you have people who are not expecting flooding suddenly being in a flood area. And that is a dangerous situation. So you do have the inundation maps in the EAP. The EAP is an emergency action plan. There's emergency coordinators and first response people. I don't want to overspeak because the job they do is fantastic. But the more that's on their radar, and that you have pre-planning for monitoring and being prepared to notify people, those are all very, very important items. So if I was to say, is it better to be prepared on the downstream for warnings and notifications, or to lower the dam a couple feet? I would say you need to let people down. You need to be prepared to let people downstream know and to be monitoring the situation. The dam is on such a big basin. It's in an urban setting. You have roofs and roads that quickly put runoff into the stream. Lowering the pool level a few feet before a flood event, the structure would likely still be quickly overwhelmed during a major flood.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, like you said, that emergency action plan is critical to make sure, like a lot of we are involved with doing like tabletop exercises, functional exercises. You really should be talking with your the county EMA director to see about facilitating those kind of activities with the dam, so that everyone that's going to be involved, first responders, police, fire, sheriff, whoever else, emergency, all the emergency people are aware of what needs to happen during, a overtopping event, and who needs to be evacuated, and those are the things that can go a long way to make sure that people are getting out of harm's way.
Back to Cleveland Heights, we have just a few more minutes.
Looks like everybody's okay here. We're good, Mayor Weiss.
Okay. Back to Shaker. All right. Seeing no more questions, we'll leave the hopefully public, you've been able to add your comments to the Q&A. We will have as we mentioned at the outset, we will have a Q&A where all of the questions and comments will be posted on both cities' websites, so you'll have access to the comments and then as well as to the questions. With that, any other comments from either councils?
I would just like to say thank you so much for this information. It's been very helpful today, and it gives us a real good framework for moving forward with the task in front of us. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, absolutely. We want to express our appreciation to the representatives. We know you took time out of a busy schedule and spent nearly an hour and a half with us, but it's It's very helpful. We've made, great strides on Horseshoe Park. Work will be starting there very shortly. So we've made good progress there, and now we turn our attention to Lower Lake. And so your information and guidance on this is much appreciated. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, then all our work sessions adjourned. And thank you all for attending and participating.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Recording stopped. Thank you.
I'm gonna adjourn this meeting if everybody's okay. Yeah, all right. Gonna adjourn this meeting at 1:25 PM.